Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the B Team Podcast. As always, they are live on the Jackrabbit Illustrated Facebook and Twitter. We are also live on the FCS Fans Nation YouTube for the fans, by the fans. Beyond that, you can catch the show if you don't catch it live anywhere you get your favorite podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere in between. As always, the B Team is brought to you by our title sponsor, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota. If you need a tractor, utility vehicle, construction equipment, zero-turn motors, parts, service, and more, there's always a Kubota dealer near you with 8 locations across the great state of South Dakota. Stop in today and get yourself into some orange equipment. We would also like to take a moment to thank our segment sponsors, Culver's, Brookings and Watertown, Jackrabbit Central, and Cubby's Sports Bar and Grill. And now, B-Team Mafia, the time's arrived. Here's Ben, Chad, and Brendan.
Welcome back, everybody. B-Team Mafia. Thanks for joining us again on Jackrabbit Illustrated. Thanks to our title sponsor, Kubota Dealers of South Dakota. Stop in at the new Kubota dealer down in Yankton. Special episode, bye week. And we bring in the big guns on bye week. We had Kevin Marshall last night with the A team, and we got certainly not B team material, much higher grade than that from Sports Illustrated and the Bluebloods. We got Zach McKinnell. Wow, I almost said McKinnell, which is not even close to right. I don't even know where that came from. But Zach, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're excited to have you. We won't hold it against you that you're on Bison 1660 before us today. But welcome to the show, man. Thanks for joining us. You're going to be a huge help with breaking down the bracket and everything.
Man, appreciate you guys having me, man. Big fan of the work you guys do. And like you said, hopefully the listeners don't hold it against me, man. Those guys at Bison 1660 are cool, man. But this is the real show.
Yeah, you get it. I like it. Hell yeah.
As long as all of our mics are working. Yeah, Ben, you're on. Awesome, bud.
Man, we're good to go.
I was hoping your mic wasn't working. We were going to start talking for you.
It was going to be just great.
Good stuff.
I'm almost as disappointed that your mic's working as I was when you got a ring light, so you didn't have the Charlie Chaplin anymore.
That was pretty priceless.
I'm glad you guys have fun at my expense.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off another big win against Missouri State to finish out the season right. We Sharon, as Stig said, the outright Missouri Valley Conference Championship. Big win against Missouri State. Not as big as some thought it would be. It almost seemed like we were coasting a little bit at times. It's hard to, throttle every team. And you could tell they were just like, hey, we're ready for the bye week. We're ready for playoffs. Let's just get this one done with.
Yeah, we only won by 3 scores, and it was only 21-3 at halftime. I wish we would have actually throttled them like we did.
And they scored 7 in garage time. So
yeah, I mean it's definitely the words of a spoiled fan base at this point. But it's fun. It's what we've come to expect. Maybe I'm just bitter that my pick didn't come through. I don't know.
Like so many of your picks didn't come through, for the record.
Not that many, not as bad. Well, we'll talk about that later, but
I want to talk about it all show. I had a hell of a week.
Yeah, you did. Big game for Jaden Yonke, big game for Mark Gronowski. He was in there a little too long for my comfort, but I think we got away fairly unscathed. Not sure. I mean, Zay looked like he's a little dinged up. And we got some guys that are dinged up, and it's going to be nice to have a bye week. It's been how many was like our 3rd, 4th week of the season when our bye was? So we had a lot of games in a row and a lot of ranked teams, a lot of big games. So the guys have been having to get up every week. And so it's huge having the bye week right now, heading into a big playoff run. So I don't know. I mean, the A-team guys really broke down the game. Do we have much to say about it? I know we got Zach on here to break down the whole playoff bracket, so we want to get to him. Do you have anything else to say about the game?
A couple things. I think I know Seth Meyer said the crowd was okay. I agree, but I think the crowd was in the first half was a little louder than I expected. Like there was more false starts on Missouri State than I ever would have guessed from that crowd. I mean, 3-4 of them, and that really shocked me that they jumped off sides as often as they did because it didn't feel like that loud of a crowd. I don't know if they didn't practice for it or what. But otherwise, it was just TCB, man. They took care of business. And as we saw that weekend, that was not a common theme across the country. That was wild, some of the teams that lost. So, I mean, got to be happy with that. One thing I do want to point out, 13th playoff appearance. It's the 12th in a row. But the thing about that I think goes unmentioned and probably deserves more shine is number one, that's only one less than NDSU, which is 14 total, which is impressive. But more impressive than that, if you think about it, we've been playoff eligible, I believe, 15 years. That's it, 15 years. So that's like Tarleton in the next, what? They become playoff eligible when, Zach, like next year?
Yes, it should be next year.
Yeah, so like in 16 years, that'd be like if Tarleton went to the playoffs 13 of those 15 years. That's insane. We went to the playoffs, have been in the playoffs 13 of 15 years. And I think that gets taken for granted a lot by us as a fan base because we're expecting national titles and semifinal runs. And it really shouldn't be. I mean, there's teams that are dying and scraping. Look at Mercer and how excited they are to be in the playoffs. And they should be. That's an accomplishment. And it's something that gets taken for granted a little bit. And I just wanted to point out how incredible that is. Just going, obviously, Stig and Rogers and keeping it going. It just kind of hit me like a lightning bolt. Like, wow, we've only not made it twice, which is absurd.
Yeah, I mean, the run's been incredible. And it feels like it's just getting going, right? I mean, like the making the playoff run has been incredible. But now, we had the kind of the run of, okay, now we're in the semifinals every year. And, now if we can make the championship this year, it'll be 3 out of the last 4. And it's like, it's just kind of starts to really add up. And, you look at the consecutive win streak. I mean, that's starting to add up. You look at what that'll look like if we end up winning the championship this year and heading into next year. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's a good time to be a Jacks fan. That's for sure.
It will, this 100%, people say they wish for the good old days. They're right now. These are the good old days. This right now are the good old days. This is the good old days. You're going to tell your kids about this. Back when Grandpappy was around, I was there for the first national title.
Seriously. I mean, you're not wrong. Like,
Yeah.
especially when we start to talk about this team and the potential all-time great FCS teams. And like, we're in the midst of it. So like, you got to enjoy it right now.
So we're like Nebraska fans from 35 years ago.
Oh, don't put that on me. Come on, man.
I mean, you can't call us Nebraska fans until we fall out of grace, and then we still think we're the best. We got a long ways to go before we reach that. But
I mean, living in the glory days,
Okay, so
in them,
for the FCS comparison, that'd be like calling us Montana fans, right? They're good now again, but they thought they were really good for the 10 years they sucked.
Right. So Zach, from an outsider's perspective, we're kind of having this step back, especially during a bye week.
Yeah.
During a bye week, you kind of start to have a little perspective, and when you're not focused on an ex opponent, like where do you see where SDSU is at right now, and where we've been and where we're going?
I've been kind of nervous all season, and I know you guys know this. I've been very high on South Dakota State this year, and it's like every time that they bring me up a notch in my like praise of the team, I'm like, it just feels like I'm setting them up and myself for like a letdown. It's like every bandwagon I get on is like I stay on a little bit too long. But I mean, I had a conversation with Coach Fred today. I was like, if you look at this team, where's the weakness? When you're looking across the playoffs, when you're looking at future opponents, how do you attack South Dakota State? quarterback's there. Gronowski's playing at an elite level right now, just had another 300-yard game. We know what the running backs are with Davis and Amar, and they got some young guys in there that have been pretty good this year. Wide receiver with the Yankee twins. We know what tight end is. And then the offensive line's, I think, one of the top two, probably three in the entire country. And my biggest criticism of South Dakota State this year has been the lack of a pass rush, but they've started to kind of generate that over the last half of the season. Linebackers are experienced, secondary forced turnovers. I'm a big fan of Deshaun Gales. Personally, I think he's probably one of the more underrated cornerbacks in the FCS. He doesn't have the gaudy interception numbers, the gaudy stats, but he locks down the side of the field for South Dakota State, and people who don't watch the film
100%.
wouldn't possibly know that. And I'm just like, where's the weakness in this team? And you look at it, it might be a first-year head coach, but Rodgers has done a heck of a job his first season, hasn't done anything to cost his team the game. I said this, I will be very shocked if anyone in the playoffs knocks this team off. I think going into next season is the year that I'm kind of judging Rodgers off of. But this year, I think if I had to put any sort of money on it, any sort of bet on it, I think it's South Dakota State's national championship to lose, especially with the side of the bracket they're on. The Bison are on the other side. Montana's on the other side. Montana State's on the other side. You're looking over there is Idaho and UAlbany the biggest threats potentially to South Dakota State. And I don't like how either of those teams match up. You do have the X storyline potentially with that game, but I still think in the trenches, Idaho has a significant disadvantage in that game. So I think it's South Dakota State and everyone else, like I've said, since probably early September.
Yeah, and we'll get into the bracket a little later. Chad, did you have anything to add?
No, I was gonna go right into the bracket, so go ahead.
Don't get there yet. We're gonna quickly do we have anything else to say about I think we moved past the Missouri State game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Just for Paul, I've been to jail before. They wouldn't let me FaceTime from there. I promise you. It was one night. Can't wait till my daughter watches that in 10 years.
His echo sounds like he's in a prison cell.
He's gonna echo?
You, Ben?
Yeah.
Do you like this better, Ben?
I just
better?
contrasting. Zach must have a really nice mic because his
He does have a good mic.
He's a
his
pro.
is
Yeah, he's an
smooth.
actual.
Is
the
that a
man
Yeti?
works for Sports Illustrated.
No, it's
That's true.
I think it's a Shure mic, SHURE.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make
Oh,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah, sure.
Oh,
You
yeah,
betcha.
sure.
I can't believe they're not
there in
more popular out
Minnesota,
here.
Yeah.
Is that
All
your
right.
buddy there in the wood chipper?
All right, let's go ahead and recap the picks from last week. If I can pull up my spreadsheet here.
What about the picks? That's a whole different show, isn't it?
We're recapping.
Usually
we recap on this
here.
show. We make picks on the other one. Where have you
You
been
know,
the whole time?
And
I've
this is
been
brought to us
confused
by who?
most of this year. By God. Brought to you by God. Are you happy now? No. It's presented by Cubbies.
Did you know this was going to be this much of an ish show when you showed up? You watched.
Well, yeah, he's aware. He knew what he was getting into.
He's like, I appreciate you willing to put your reputation on the line.
Right here. Kendall hit the nail on the head. I hadn't even said it yet. It says, Zach, the biggest letdown being on a show with these three clowns instead of Coach Fred.
It's definitely losing the beer battle for sure. Like I win that easily on all the other shows. This one, I'm ranking close to last in this category.
Oh,
You got Ben.
You got me. Mine's not that good.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on with the ad read, Brendan.
Cubbies Sports Bar and Grill in Brookings, South Dakota, downtown Brookings. It's got you covered for beer, chips, and more. No, come down to Cubbies. The first round playoff games, definitely stop down there, get yourself some beer, burgers, chips, Chislic, the whole 9 yards. Do you even know what Chislic is, Zach? Did you get to have some when you were up here?
No, I did not.
Oh, that is sad. If you come back to Brookings, if you're willing to make that trek again, we will hook you up with some Chislic because that is South Dakota's best hidden secret and kind of their football brag board or football food. It's their food. It's their food you can brag on.
It's
Whatever.
the state food.
It is the state food, isn't it? Yeah.
Not the state dessert, but the state food.
It's fantastic. Cubbies has got it. They've got you covered for your beer, booze, and more. And you're your number one place to go for Jack Sports. So head on down there. And that's the end of the ad. So I hope you're satisfied.
Very satisfied.
How was
What's
your
up?
trip to Brookings? Tell us maybe a little about it.
I had a blast. Listen, that was it's my second trip up there. My other long trip was Montana State last year. I mean, like you guys know this, the crowd was just electric that night, especially with the blackout and the game was amazing. So I mean, I had a blast, and also it was kind of a nice relief after the first 2 weeks of the season. I traveled; it was like 120 field temp the first week at the game I was at the FCS kickoff because of the turf. It was so nice up there. The weather's amazing, and I had fun in Sioux Falls. But I got to go out the first night I was there and just kind of explore. But yeah, me and Dustin had an experience on the flight out because Dustin, I don't remember, was it a flashlight? It was a flashlight. Like they had a light out of a flashlight. We had to sit on the tarmac for like 2.5 hours. And so I missed my connecting flight. It had to get like rescheduled. And yeah, it was the trip back home sucked, but man, my experience in Brookings was amazing.
So was the town of Brookings what you expected? I'm always curious to that because everybody, you hear Brookings is a tiny town and all that stuff out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm curious from a Southerner, not from the area's perspective.
I actually did.
You can be honest.
I really didn't get a chance to see Brookings. So I drove up from Sioux Falls the day of the game, went straight to the game to get to y'all's tailgate. And then by the time we got done with media stuff, it was like empty. Like, I mean, it was so late that I drove back and got back to Sioux Falls like 2 or 3 a.m. or something like that. Because I didn't end up leaving until way later. I sat and, uploaded the highlights and pictures and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't even have a chance to see Brookings. I just know what it's like to get off the interstate, drive to the stadium, and get back on the interstate to go to Sioux Falls.
How did the tailgating atmosphere maybe compare to those games down in the South? I'm really curious about that.
I think you guys are underrated. I got my first experience at the championship game because you guys showed up in Frisco for the national championship game. And my first takeaway was everyone is way bigger than I expected. Everyone's like 6'6" and has a beard. And I never usually feel small next to people. Felt very small at the tailgate, but no, I think you guys do a heck of a job. Looking across, it's just tough, man, because some of the tailgating experience that I've been to, like I'll say the best tailgate experience in the FCS is Alcorn. I mean, when you drive up, when I say this, I mean it. When you drive in those woods in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, and you start seeing the smoke come up from behind the trees, I'm telling you, it will change your life. I'll tell you guys, I went to the Soul Bowl against Jackson last year. We had to get to campus as media. We were sending email that it's a one-way in, one-way out street to Alcorn State. We had to get there at 4:30 in the morning for a 2:00 kickoff to even get on campus in time for the game. I got off the exit to Alcorn at 4, didn't park in Media Park until almost 7.
Wow.
For that game. And
That's
my
crazy.
the tailgate spot I went to, they served breakfast, lunch, a snack, and dinner at the tailgate and had tables and everything set out.
Hey, honey, you're watching right now. We've got goals now. Those are my people. Yes.
You guys
and
were
if
amazing.
My wife's watching, hey, you think it's all day. It could be all day.
It definitely could. Listen, they got out there like 4 a.m. And I mean, they call it the reservation because of all like the tailgate spots, the smoke, because it looks like little groups, like groups of Braves or whatever. Like that's how it got its nickname.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Very cool.
So is that one of the bucket list games? If you're like a Midwestern FCS football
the
fan?
Soul Bowl. Alcorn State, Jackson State, on the reservation in Lorman. Now I will say, just brace for it because y'all think y'all are in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota. It's different going down Highway 60 whatever and to Lorman, Mississippi.
Well, I grew up in northern Wisconsin where the definition of big town was 6,000 people. So I feel like it'll be similar. I got that.
They don't even have a gas station within an hour. They had to build a gas station on campus for people to have a gas station for their cars because the next closest city is like Vicksburg and Natchez, which is like an hour away.
Dang.
How many people do they get at that game? Like, what's the capacity of stadium?
I want to say last year it's like so they roll in extra bleachers for that game too. By the way, so it's like close to 30K.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's the campus. The campus is Lorman. Like there is no city of Lorman. This is Alcorn State.
That's crazy. Well, that's certainly a bucket list now. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
That's all awesome. Right. Well, let's go ahead and roll through the recap of the games that we picked this week. Drake beat Butler 13-9 and covered. Austin P beat UCA 14-12, but UCA covered. Richmond won 27-26 and covered. Villanova beat Delaware 31-7 and covered. UC Davis beat Sac State 31-21 and covered. Montana whooped Montana State 35-7 and covered easy. They were 6-point dogs and won by 28 points. So that's impressive. Getting to the Valley games, you got USD whooped up on Western Illinois 48-6. They covered. Youngstown State beat Murray State 34-17 and covered. Southern Illinois won 38-9 against Indiana State. They covered. UND barely beat Illinois State. They had to score late just to get into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth there. They won 22-21. Illinois State covered in that game. NDSU took care of business at UNI 48-27 and covered. And then last but not least, SDSU beat Missouri State 35-17. Missouri State did cover in that one. The big news is that Brendan and I finally did it. We beat the computer, everybody. We
Death
did
of
it.
the machine.
We the best we've done so far is tied it. The computer went 5-7. I went 6-6. Brendan went 8-4. So I am now 8 games behind Brendan, and I am royally screwed. But we'll see. We'll see what I can do in the playoffs here. But yeah, fun. No, I am not.
Yes, he's frozen again. Yes.
All right. Well, I'll be
Hold
back.
on. Screenshot. Everybody,
no,
make him big.
screen
Make him big.
Make him big?
Oh,
sorry, bud.
man. So
Yeah, it's so much. So while we wait for him to come back, maybe I can pose the question: what was the biggest upset of the weekend in your eyes? Could be any game.
I mean, I don't even know if there's another pick other than Wofford over Furman. That's just I understand they were missing their quarterback, their running back, a few other guys. You can't lose to Wofford. I mean, I still don't even understand how that happened. I don't think either team hit 200 total yards of offense.
I mean, it's basically like losing to Western Illinois. I mean,
That might be worse.
it might be. I don't know.
I guess they got one win. Western Illinois.
Western Illinois doesn't have any wins.
Yeah, so that might be about the equivalent.
What was Furman favored by in that game? It had to be
Probably
like
a million. I mean,
28?
I don't even. Probably
had to be at least 28. At
let's
least.
see.
So
yeah, that's a bad loss.
And then Western manages to lose the VMI. And it shouldn't be the SoCon conference anymore. It should be the SoChoke conference.
And the funny part is, like, both of those teams lost their starting quarterbacks because Cole Gonzalez went out mid-game with an injury.
Right.
And I really do think, I know they're not going to say it. They're just going to blame it on the VMI loss. They didn't let Western Carolina in over Chattanooga because Cole Gonzalez's injury. I'm convinced of that. Yeah. They'd rather put a fully healthy team in compared to a team that's missing their starting quarterback, and Desmond Reed's still not fully healthy.
Right. So here's something I got a question for you, Zach, because we know they know about injuries and things like that, which you would assume to some degree the school has to communicate to the committee through some form or another to the committee that this guy's going to be back, this guy won't. Do you think there's a lot of pressure for them to be accurate and not fudge if somebody's going to be back? Because otherwise you just tell them like, oh, yeah, he's going to be back for sure, and then he doesn't play. Right. So it feels like there's got to be some sort of consequence in the background where if you lie about that, like you're not seeing the playoff without 9 wins for the next decade.
Yeah, and I mean, injury reports are non-existent at the FCS level anyway. I mean,
right.
It's impossible to do previews and know who's starting and who's not, because some teams never update like their depth chart on like the media packet that they give us. Never updated for some teams, which makes it impossible to know who's playing and who's, unless you reach out to the player and they still might not tell you. Also, Furman was a 20-point favorite. By the way, I forgot to look that up, but I don't know how they confirm it. I'm assuming they just trust that teams are telling the truth. And with the Furman situation, you have to give that team a seat. I understand. I mean, I could see the argument if you didn't, but that bye week has to help them a little bit, right? Like, let's give this team a bye week. They were good all year long. Yes, they lost to Wofford the final week, but if we can give them an extra week, Tyler Huff can get healthy. Dominic Roberto can get healthy. Some of those secondary guys can get healthy. This is a team that could possibly, live up to the seeding. I don't know how they confirm it, though, and I wonder if they do hold grudges. But with the way that the committee rotates, I just don't know, especially with how much is going to rotate next year. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold it against Furman if they lied about Tyler Huff's health.
You think that the committee, like in National Treasure, has the president's book that gets passed on? They've got one for the committee chair.
Well, I don't know who UT Martin pissed off, but this is another year where they just, last year was a coin toss. This year was a loss to Stanford and get left out. I mean, it's just brutal.
Yeah. On the flip side,
toss.
you got to, oh my God. That was so funny seeing the disappointment on their commissioner's face. Like, she took a drink of spoiled milk when that coin toss finished.
Or Malort, perhaps.
Or Malort.
Did you take yours?
Yeah.
How was
we
it?
all did. It was
bitter.
Look, I haven't tasted it before, but this is, I'm pretty sure, what the devil's asshole tastes like.
It's the most bitter thing in the world. I swear.
Yeah, it's
and
like
it doesn't go away.
Berries.
No, it hangs around.
Hangs. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Zach, do you know what we're talking about, Malort?
It's a Chicago thing.
You're lucky. Don't go to Chicago.
So
I think that's what Chicago tastes like. Thanks, Deb. They bottled Chicago.
It's a liquor that is made from wormwood.
Oh, is that what it's made from?
Yeah, wormwood. So like there's wormwood tea. Like some people drink wormwood tea for healing properties or something. But that tastes awful too. But yeah, they make alcohol out of this stuff, and it's it's a joke to buy it for people. And so it was Brendan's birthday over the past weekend, and Deb Gronowski brought a 6-pack of Malort shots for Brendan.
You know what the package says on it, Zach?
What's
it says
that?
For your friends or your enemies, which is
exactly what it says.
The most honest labeling I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. I might be passing.
Yeah, so if you ever end up in Chicago and somebody says, let's take Malort shots, just say no.
I got you. I'll
put
that in my
notes.
notes.
Is made with wormwood too. So
it may be. I'm not sure.
Do you have any toilet wine instead of the Malort?
Right.
Yeah, Deb says, suck it up, Buttercup. I'm soft. I'm a big softie. What can I say?
She loved the look on her faces.
Oh God! And she took it with us. So
yeah.
Can't hate. Ball don't lie, right? It's on the bracket, I think, right?
Yeah.
Should we go on to the bracket?
That's
what I'm excited to hear about.
Before we do have to say thanks to Deb for the Jardinera.
Yes,
appreciate that. She brought us some of that. It's another Chicago thing. And they tried out what did they try out? Pickled asparagus. They tried out spicy pickled quail eggs. Have you ever had any of that stuff, Zach?
No.
No.
Oh,
well,
so
you'll have to have some chislik, and you'll
also
have some pickled foods when you come up next time.
You don't have to have the booze because we know you're a pro and got to do your job and everything. But we'll hook you up with the other stuff. I'm curious. So the thing I'm burning to ask you, because I think of all the national FCS media, you are by far the most plugged in and knowledgeable about the HBCUs and the MEAC and SWAC and everything like that. How do you feel about the draw that NC Central got? And then how do you think they're going to do against a Richmond and an Albany? Because I feel it's a little bit fortunate they're in with the CAA teams like that. They have familiarity with beating Elon. Do you think they could go on a run? Because the MEAC has its woes in the playoffs. And I mean, what do you expect when you're sending not your champion? You're bound to take a disproportionate number of losses compared to other conferences. But how do you feel about that? How do you think that's going to go for them?
I think, that was probably the best draw they could have. Maybe if they got paired up with Gardner Webb, that could have been about the same level, but I think they got lucky that they didn't have to go play South Dakota State round 2. And like Brendan, I mean, you quoted me on that. Like it's literally just lining up for slaughter if you're in that top part of the bracket over there. I mean, no one wants to go to Brookings, and I'll be honest with how Montana's playing. Didn't want to go to Missoula either.
No.
Moving forward, so those are the two places. Like you got lucky you didn't have to go, and you look at Central, they're undefeated against CAA teams this year, and they've like 4 or 5-1 against CAA teams over the past 2 years. Their only loss was an upset loss to Campbell last year on the road. And as much as, common opponents don't necessarily matter, it does matter to the players in terms of giving them confidence that they can compete in the postseason. They see the HBCU record that kind of brings some doubt, but you look at Richmond, a loss to Morgan State early on, which Central had a solid win over them. And then Albany was taken to double overtime by Morgan State like 2 weeks later, and Morgan had multiple chances to win that game. I think Central feels confident. I'll say this, they match up really well with Richmond. If you're asking me, I think Central beats Richmond this weekend. With Davies fully healthy, with Mookie Collier at running back, with that defense playing at a high level. And I hate to say it because there's no such thing as a good loss. That Howard loss was actually good for them in a way because it kind of woke them up. And I know you guys worry about that with South Dakota State. Are we going to start coasting? Are we going to start smelling that hype a little bit too much? Do we need that wake-up call? Central got hit over the head. And if they played Howard, in my opinion, 10 times, they win probably 8 of those. And it was just a perfect recipe. And then Davies, dislocated 2 of his fingers, hitting it on someone's helmet, attempting a pass. They couldn't pass the football, and it just got out of hand on the road. Central, in my opinion, is a perfect team to make a small run. Now, I'm not picking them to go on to win at the Kibbe Dome is what I'm probably going to project there. I don't think they go and beat Idaho. I don't know if they're that level of a team, but they're a really good matchup against Richmond. In that Albany game, those are about even, I want to say. The only concern I would have in that game is Albany has an elite pass rush. They got 2 of the best edge rushers in the country. Kelly at linebacker leads the country in total tackles. If they can't block up front and Davies is under pressure all day, that's a terrible, terrible matchup for Central. And it's a game that everyone's talking about Davies as one of the top quarterbacks in the country. That Albany game is going to have to prove it because they like to work off the run, work Davies off the play action, let him play with his legs. Albany's going to take the run away. Can Davies go out there and throw for 300-400 yards, which we've seen him do sometimes, but it comes on a way bigger stage on the road with the chance to go to the quarterfinals. And there's only been 2 HBCU teams to beat PWIs in the playoffs, and that was FAMU way back in the day, and Tennessee State beat a Pioneer League team in like 2013. So this is this could be a historic moment. Love the Richmond matchup. We'll see about Albany. I've been pushing the Albany bandwagon all year, so I don't even know who I want to win that game. But if they get to the quarters, man, you got to give a round of applause to Trey Oliver for what he's done for Central, given that this team is still newer at the FCS level. It wasn't that long ago they were a D2 team, and he's got Central winning the Celebration Bowl last year over Jackson State. Now they're in the playoffs with a chance to possibly make history this weekend in Richmond.
I don't think anybody can add anything to that. Good luck.
No.
Well, excellent analysis, sir.
You know what that's like? That's like
what
when
we have you here for.
if you're at a karaoke bar and someone who actually sings in a band goes and sings karaoke, and you're up next, and you just don't want to go. You're just like,
that's when you put Dustin up.
No.
Dustin's following anybody. Just make Dustin go after the guy who's a lead singer.
Yeah, he's confident. He'll make it through on pure confidence, is what it is.
For sure. While we're in this section of the bracket, that Nichols Southern Illinois matchup, I feel like most people are going to have Southern Illinois winning that. Do you think Southern Illinois can go to the Kibbe Dome and win?
No. I just don't think it's a good matchup for them because Idaho's weakness has been the offensive line. And I don't think Southern Illinois is just super dominant defensively. And I don't think they don't have that physical offensive identity. They're going to air it out. They got elite weapons on the outside. They got some wide receivers that can go make plays. Idaho's strength is secondary. So I just don't think that's a good matchup on the road. I think they get past Nichols easily. No offense to Nichols. They have shocked me. I mean, when I went to the Sac State Nichols game earlier this year, when I watched that team, never would have thought I was previewing a playoff matchup for that team after watching that game, and they just came out of nowhere. I like Idaho to win that one. I think Southern Illinois is a one and done. Now the question becomes the health of Giovanni McCoy too, because he's been banged up as well. But like Brendan said, I think a week off and being honest about the health of your players possibly could have played into they got the 4 seed rather than I thought they could have been a 5 or 6. He should be back, and even if he's not 100%, I think we can all agree Giovanni McCoy is going out there and at least going to give it a go, if anything. But I like Idaho in that matchup. But if Giovanni's out, Southern Illinois, that changes the whole conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say about that is Southern Illinois has an elite defensive backfield. So Idaho is going to have to run the ball against them because Southern Illinois, they've got the DBs to shut down a pass game, and they tackle extremely well. They can turn that into a low-scoring game. And if Nick Baker can get it going, I give Southern Illinois a pretty good chance at that. But that's just a big question mark right now is how is Nick Baker going to play? Because they live and die by how he plays right now. And so I give him a fighter's chance in that one. And I honestly, I don't think the spread will be that big. I think the spread in that one will be less than a touchdown probably.
Yeah.
Well, the other reason.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the other reason I'd give Southern Illinois a puncher's chance in that game is we've seen, because Lujan has obviously a fair amount of influence on his game plans, play calling, things like that. And a lot of SDSU's game plan up until the Southern Illinois game was predicated on get the balls in the hands of your athletes, let them make people miss and go, which in the FCS works a lot, especially when you guys got like the Yankee twins. But the Southern SIU's defense, man, they tackle like in space, one-on-one, they'll tackle you, which most won't. And I feel like Idaho does rely on that a little bit as well, like SDSU does, where you've got athletes at receiver, just make a play, get the ball to them, make a play. And I think Southern Illinois will be able to stop that. So I'm curious I think Idaho would win. I agree with you, but I think Southern would have a puncher's chance at keeping it low enough where crazy stuff happens.
Anthony Woods is the guy to watch in that one because I think he's kind of had an underrated year. And because he had that one big game, I want to say it was Eastern Washington, where he put up like 5 touchdowns, but he's kind of been hit or miss for them. So, I mean, I guess it's a conversation surrounding, are we going to get a good Nick Baker and we're going to get a good Anthony Woods, which is a huge question mark. Because I feel like Baker's kind of entered that Theo Day realm where one week he's a Walter Payton candidate and the next week, why is he starting for any team in the country?
Right. We said immediately after that game here, we're like, if SDSU Baker, because he plays us out of his mind every damn time.
Yep, always.
If he showed up, they're top 4 seed, man. Like, yeah. But he doesn't for probably 6% of the games. He doesn't.
Well, that's what's crazy is like as bad as he's played, I don't want to see him come to Brookings because for some reason he plays out of his mind against SDSU.
And it feels like he plays even better in Brookings.
Yeah, I don't know. He gets up for games against us, but
he turns into like the FCS version of Baker Mayfield or something against us for some reason.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think, out of this little pod that we're looking at here, I think Southern Illinois is an outside shot, but I think Idaho is a pretty safe bet, which if you scroll up, Chad, we can look at our part of the bracket a little bit because that's who we'll feed into. Could this, Zach, have set up any better for SDSU?
I mean, no, but like I said, I don't think it mattered who they put.
Well, yeah.
In this, I mean, it's good that North Dakota State's on the other side. I mean, because obviously that would be a way tougher matchup than any, I think, of these 4 teams. And the crazy part is, I will say, I want, like I said earlier, Mercer is the team I'm probably going to pick to win this weekend, and it's really because I want to see Ty James against Deshaun Gales. That's the matchup. I mean, Ty James is an issue at wide receiver for Mercer. I think in my opinion, he's the best wide receiver in the country right now at the FCS level. The problem is he has Carter Peavy at quarterback. And if they can get him the ball, he can go make plays. Like I'm telling you, that kid, I'm not lying. Yeah, listen,
somebody clip that and send it to Mercer so you can put it on Mercer.
Yeah, but
don't send that to Mercer. Don't send that to Mercer.
Get it on their hype video.
Deshaun Gales talk,
Yeah, I mean, listen, Ty James would be a 1,500-yard wide receiver with a good quarterback. I mean, he's just that good. So I want to see that matchup just because I love seeing elite matchups, wide receiver versus corner. But at the same time, nobody is going to Brookings out of that first round matchup and winning. But the crazy part is, I hate to say it, I could see a Youngstown State matchup in the quarters, because Youngstown State is a terrible matchup for Villanova and what they want to do. The way that they can play downhill, they're really good at the line of scrimmage. And I think Bryce at wide receiver for Youngstown is a game changer as well. Villanova struggles with physicality. I think if you're Youngstown, with the way they control the clock outside of the South Dakota State games, I feel like that's an anomaly. They're going to dominate the time possession, and they're going to punch Villanova in the mouth. And I really would not be surprised if Youngstown goes into Villanova and knocks them off, and then we get to watch another 30-point beatdown of Youngstown and Brookings, but that's fine.
Little penguin waddle, and everybody's going to be upset.
Oh yeah. See, if Youngstown makes it that far, do you know how obnoxious their fans are going to be? I love you guys, Youngstown fans. I know you're watching right now, YSU Nation. Don't you be hiding.
Some of them are good. Some of them are good.
They're good, but oh my God, they'll be loud. And there's nothing wrong with being loud, for the record. But I am curious about Mercer against Gardner-Webb, because Gardner-Webb has a history of upsetting people in the first round of the playoffs. They don't go deep, but they'll get that one win, and it's Mercer's first time. And so I am curious, are they going to let their nerves get to him? Mercer should win. I think Mercer should win by a lot, but I could see Gardner-Webb clipping them. So that's why I love first round games, man. They're the best, because you don't really know.
I must say, that's probably one of the best first round games, I feel like. I don't know how you guys feel. Yeah. I feel like that's going to be one of the more competitive ones. Because I get people looking at Gardner-Webb at the beginning of the season. They had some bad losses, and they did not look good. But since they started that true freshman, who I think Gilman's going to win it. Don't get me wrong. He's probably going to be the Jerry Rice Award winner. Jalen King has been electric since taking over that starting position. I mean, just as a dual threat quarterback. So it'll be interesting to see how he challenges Mercer's defense. But I look watching Mercer this year. It's weird because you got Ty James, Devron Harper, 2 All-Americans on that side, on the offensive side of the ball, but their defense has kind of carried them this year. As much as it's their first time, I kind of think with the way Chronic coaches, that actually might be an advantage for Mercer, because I went to that Furman game last year at Mercer. They got an underrated environment. Like, those fans are into it, and they got a pretty good home field advantage. I think Mercer can find a way to get it done, but I'll never sleep on Trey Lamb. He just finds a way to get it done sometimes. So I think it'll be very competitive. I think this is a 1-score game, but because of Mercer's weapons offensively, and with the true freshman quarterback going on the road, starting in his first playoff game, I do think that's a disadvantage for Gardner-Webb this weekend.
You heard it here first, folks. Set your clicker to the Gardner-Webb game at 2:00. These are all Eastern time shown on here.
There you go. So obviously, I think out of this quadrant here, you've got SDSU moving on to face likely Idaho, is what we're thinking. How do you think, you kind of mentioned that potential matchup between Idaho and SDSU. You got the Eck factor there. How do you think that matchup goes?
South Dakota State by probably 10-14. Again, teams that have good offensive lines and are physical defensively are the worst matchups for Idaho. They are bad in the trenches, and it's because they're young, and I'm not holding that against Idaho, but it's just they're a year away. They're a year away from being a national title contender. They can keep everyone together. It's just not their year. And I think a run, what would that be? The semis that they would play South Dakota State? A run to the semis, man. Give Eck the coach of the year. That's amazing that he's got Idaho in the semifinals in year 2. They're just not built to beat a team like South Dakota State. South Dakota State's going to run the football down their throats, pressure McCoy all night long, and they're not going to be able to run the football, and it's going to be a long night for them. Now, Eck will have something special, which is why I say 10-14, but I don't see them being built to beat South Dakota State, especially on the road this year.
So now that we're halfway through, we should mention that this is brought to you by Jackrabbit Central. They're going to have their 30% off sale on Friday for Black Friday. Maybe even get yourself some black gear for the blackout next year. It'll be online or in person. Go to Jackrabbit Central. They've got so much stuff, guys. If you go in person, if you haven't walked into the bookstore itself, not the stadium one, there's so much stuff. They got robes, pajama sets. I mean, they got anything, everything, and stuff you didn't even think was a thing. So Stop down to Jackrabbit Central. Check them out online. They have a big and tall section now, which Chad and I are very excited about because, God bless it, I need some longer shirts for my torso. I don't need wider ones.
I need shirts because of pie are skirter.
I need wider shirts too now, but like generally it's a longer thing. I'm curious, since we're halfway through here, Zach, in looking at the bracket and everything. Any seeds surprise you? Like me, Montana State at 6 surprised the hell out of me because if you look at their resume, they have nothing. And for me, the one that surprised me that got left out was UC Davis. Like they're the ones who, like, you put Sac State in, who just got whacked by them, and then you don't put in Davis. That really made me scratch my head. But from you, with you have more of a Southern viewpoint because you're around those teams a little more. What do you see from your perspective? Biggest snubs, weirdest seeds, that sort of stuff.
I'm with you. I think I predicted 7 of the 8 seeds correctly in my predictions, and I had North Dakota State at 8, and I didn't have Montana State as a seed. I didn't think they did enough. Now, do I think they're probably one of the best 8 teams in the country? Yes. I'm not pissed that they got it, but if you're basing it off a resume, which is what we're supposed to be doing here, I don't think they had a top 8 resume. They lost all their important games. And what's their like true signature win right now? I mean, is it better than any other win that North Dakota State has? I don't necessarily think so. And then for me too, I know not every committee member thinks like me. I put a lot of stock into how teams are trending going into the postseason. And Montana State's kind of been on a little bit of a downward trend. They haven't played well these past few weeks, especially this past weekend. That was a very disappointing loss to Montana, and the way they lost that game I picked Montana to win, but not by 30. And so the way they lost stuck out to me. And North Dakota State, say what you want about how that team played early and that loss to North Dakota, they're trending up. They're playing better every single week. They got back-to-back ranked wins to end the season. To me, that weighed more in my mind for a seed than what Montana State has done. And then I get some people have been clamoring for Austin Peay to be in the conversation, but I think that loss to Southern Illinois took them out of it after what North Dakota State just did to Southern Illinois. So I get why Austin Peay wasn't going to be in the conversation. And I don't think they had the resume to be a seed in the first place. But that was my only shock with seeds. Now, the teams that got in, I was a little bit shocked about. I was very shocked about Chattanooga. I'm happy they got in because that's a team that's kind of been snubbed the past few years. So it's great they get a shot. But I mean, is their resume really better than UC Davis right now? Is their resume better than UT Martin? Is their resume better than Western Carolina right now? There's an argument that all 3 of those teams have better resumes. Now let's take Western Carolina out because the injury, in my opinion, was the deciding factor with them. UT Martin, 8 D1 wins. They technically have a ranked win according to the coaches poll for Eastern Illinois, who was also a first 4 team out. Chattanooga's signature win was Mercer, but that loss to North Alabama is worse than any loss that UT Martin. That North Alabama loss is worse than the Sanford loss for UT Martin. And if we're taking injuries into account, does UC Davis not get a pass for losing like 80% of their games when Land Larison was out? And since he's come back, they're 3-1, and he's been rolling, and they're a different team with him in the game, and they just demolished Sac State. Because I know what the score says. They were the better team from kickoff till that clock hit 0. So I think UT Martin and really and truly UC Davis were the 2 that I was shocked. And I'm also glad I was a little bit surprised Incarnate Word wasn't in the first 4 teams out discussion. Do I think they should get in? No, but they weren't even in the top 4 of teams that could have been in at 9-2. And what I'm happy that does is it sets the precedent, because there was this talk last year that it was just HBCU teams that get left out at 9-2 and a poor strength of schedule and no signature wins. The committee for 2 years now, FAMU last year, Incarnate Word this year, they have identical resumes. They were both left out. So what the committee's saying is, we don't care if you're 9-2, if you don't have a signature win, if you have a poor strength of schedule, if you don't play well in your wins, we're not giving you a seed. We're going to take a 7-4 team that played a way tougher strength of schedule, might have a ranked win, an FBS win, and they're getting in over you. And I understand Incarnate Word, it's not their fault. Sanford backed out of a home-and-home last second, and it kind of screwed them with that North American. And then, of course, the Northwestern State situation was a tragedy, not their fault. But at the end of the day, the committee said we have to set a precedent, and that's what we're sticking to from now on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree there. One comment on the seeding part with Montana State and NDSU. It's interesting that I feel like it came down to losses for both of them. I think that they looked at NDSU's huge loss to a UND team that barely made the playoffs, and then Montana State's very close loss to SDSU. I think that held a lot of weight for them, and then that big loss for NDSU held a lot of weight and probably kept them out of the seed discussion there. So. Just kind of interesting how that all played out. But yeah, I mean, like you said, when you look at Montana State's resume, it's really not that impressive. I don't want to talk about Montana State too much, but are you on the same page with us as why don't they play Sean Chambers at quarterback more?
Yes, I went on a whole rant today about it. I don't know if y'all saw it, but
I haven't yet.
That's
Not
why
yet.
they are not a national championship contender in my eyes.
Yeah.
They're not going to win the Natty like that. And that's why they consistently struggle against elite teams when they go up against them. I understand Malott got hurt. They were getting beat like that by North Dakota State in the Natty because of their style of play. They got beat by South Dakota State in the semis because of that style of play. They got beat by Montana this past weekend because of that style of play. And you can even go back to what was it, the Idaho game?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they got beat like that. You cannot be one-dimensional against elite defenses. They're going to take the run. They're going to slow down the run. You can't take Montana State's rushing game away unless you're South Dakota State last year, but you're not taking the run completely away. They're going to get their 200 yards, force turnovers, and make the quarterbacks uncomfortable. If they're that one-dimensional, they're not going to be able to establish drives consistently against elite teams, and then their defense isn't good enough to pick up the slack. They got playmakers. There's no one on that defense that's elite. And that's their biggest issue. And if they don't figure out the quarterback situation, as talented as Chamber and Malott are, that's not a championship team with the way they play. Because if you go up against South Dakota State, if you get a rematch with Montana, it's not going to go any differently because they're going to take your run, they're going to slow your run game down, and Malott and Chambers are not going to be able to win you the game right now.
Yeah. And I mean, with that in mind, I feel like NDSU, I mean, you talk about how well they're playing right now. I mean, I feel like that sets up pretty well for them to obviously have an easy win against Drake and then go to Montana State where, they're just not playing well right now. And I think NDSU has figured something out. I think their defense still has issues. I think that'll be a very high scoring game I could see. Where Montana State, they're going to get theirs on the ground against NDSU because NDSU doesn't tackle very well. But I think that's a very favorable draw for NDSU to get to go to Montana State there.
Yeah, I agree. Because let's just be honest, they get a first round bye is what happened.
Yeah.
The committee said this was the number 9 seed. They're going to give them a first round bye with Drake because they're going to play their backups by the late second quarter, early third quarter.
Right.
I said, if North Dakota State finds a way to get past Montana State on the road, watch out. Because that team is going to be on another level in terms of momentum. And I'll say this, watching South Dakota play, I don't think they want a rematch with North Dakota State with how they're playing right now. North Dakota State is going to go into that stadium and tear them apart in a rematch. And I'll say, I don't know, because Montana's hot. I'm not going to say they're a lock for Frisco. They're a lock for the semifinals if they get past Montana State.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if UND can beat Sac State and then somehow go to Vermilion and win. It'll be real interesting to see, number one, who hosts that home game. And then number 2, can UND have even close to a repeat performance of what they did in the Alara Center? I mean, I feel like they have a lot better chance if that game ends up in UND somehow. But I think we're all on the same page of like, it just is not going to go the same way.
Am I missing something? Maybe y'all can help me because I know you guys watch a lot of MVFC. I don't think North Dakota is a very good team.
No,
not for the last 6 weeks.
They're living on that big NDSU win.
That's it.
Okay, I'm just making sure it won't miss me because I don't see it. I just don't see. I wouldn't be surprised if Sac State beats them this weekend. And Sac State's not playing well, but it wouldn't surprise me.
And USD's got to do a little better than just eking by at the last second against a lot of teams in the playoffs because they've gotten by this whole year doing that. They are a good team. I don't want to take away from that, but they've had a lot of close games that they were. You call it lucky, call it good. I don't know, but lucky that they won. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Overall, I think this quadrant sets up pretty well for NDSU, just with the way the other teams in the quadrant have been playing. Would not be surprised to see NDSU come out of this quadrant and make the semis at least. And then
One
going
thing
down,
I want
go
to
ahead.
throw out quick about that, because I've seen a lot of USD fan chatter that, we got such a tough quadrant, and they're pouting. Well, first off, you're the 3 seed. You're not supposed to have the easiest quadrant in the damn bracket. You're the 3 seed.
That's how that works.
Second off, and it doesn't always work that way, but it worked out this way. We got to play Montana State and NDSU. No, you don't. You have to play Montana State or NDSU,
Right.
which, hate to break it to you, Villanova very well may be as good as Montana State at this moment in time, because Montana State doesn't look great. I think Montana State's better, but South Dakota, I think, is very capable of losing to any seeded team as well as they are beating them. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but that whole pouty, we got the toughest thing, like what, North Dakota? North Dakota sucks right now. They scored 3 points against you. I think in actual teams that have more than 6 wins that they played, outside of NDSU, they scored 24 points in like 4 games or something. Like they're averaging like 6 points a game or something silly like that. And their defense isn't that good either. And Sac State, they haven't beat anybody good yet either. They beat Stanford, who sucks because it's Stanford. I mean, it's a great win. Don't get me wrong, but that was 11 weeks ago, and they haven't beat anybody since. So it's not an easy quadrant, but I don't think it's as bad of a quadrant as people are building up to be outside of name recognition.
Sac State's the only team I've ever seen be rolling and have a good quarterback in Caden Bennett, who was balling out, and bench him for a true freshman for no apparent reason. It's like, what are we doing? If like, what kind of I don't listen. I know Coach Thompson is my guy. What are we doing? And then they start the freshman against UC Davis. They're getting beat to death. They put in Caden Bennett and he throws 3 touchdowns.
Maybe stick with that.
He must have an attitude problem the coach don't like or something, you know.
Or he took the coach's daughter out on a date. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or wife.
And he didn't call her back, so he's pissed.
Like Dustin says here, if USD fans could read and figure out how to get on YouTube, they'd be really upset.
Fans.
I mean, they can prove it, right? Like they've earned that 3 seed. They have the opportunity. I mean, they're going to have a pretty decent chance to win their first game, and then they're going to have a tough game. But it's in Vermilion. We'll see how many fans show up for that game. I would be surprised if they sell it out, but I don't know. Do it. Sell it out. Go win that game and make the semis. Prove us wrong. But I think
they're going to give 9,000 tickets to the local Boys and Girls Club and call it a sellout.
Right. But yeah, I think, you know,
and they'll still only have 2,000 people there.
I think it's NDSU or Montana State's quadrant. Whoever wins that one, I can see them going to the semis. All right, let's get to the last quadrant here. If you want to scroll down there, Chad.
Wait, Ben, you can see whoever wins between USD and the winner of Montana or NDSU going to the semis. Isn't that how quadrants work?
Yeah, what do you mean?
That's what you said.
No, I didn't. Well, apparently I said it wrong then. What I was saying is that I think
one of these 3 teams in this quadrant is going to the semis. I swear to God.
What I meant was the winner of NDSU and Montana State are likely going to the semis.
And I'm putting money on whoever scores the most points doing it either.
All right. Moving on. Then you got Chattanooga, the team that may or may not deserve to be in the playoffs, going to Austin P. Lafayette going to Delaware. Zach, do you have any comments on those 2 games?
Delaware by a lot. And that Chattanooga Austin P game is a toss-up to me. That's the other one that's kind of like that 50-50 game, because Chattanooga has a good defensive line. Jay Person is balling out. Their secondary is okay. That Chase has really kind of stabilized that quarterback position, but Mike DeLelio is having a heck of a year for Austin P. And I really like how Scotty Walden coaches his team. Their energy is just unmatched. But I guess that's what happens when you hire a 30-year-old head coach that is old as some of the players now with the transfer portal rules. But I mean, and I think those 2 teams are going to be motivated, because with the question mark surrounding Furman, they're looking at that second round matchup as a very, very winnable game. where if they can win this game, I mean, would it blow anyone's mind on this show that Austin Peay can go beat Furman? Very winnable in my opinion. And Chattanooga played Furman well earlier in the year. That's a game that they would love to get a rematch for. And for the bottom half, listen, Montana is going to absolutely destroy either team that goes to Missoula. Like, it is a problem. Let's see, Lafayette by 10, Austin Peay by 14. I'm picking Austin Peay, Dustin. So I'll Lafayette by 10 is crazy. I'll take whatever you want to bet on that. That's outrageous. Yeah, but I think it's Montana's. Yeah, I think it's Montana's region to lose. I just don't see. I don't see any of those teams going to Missoula and winning.
That's the interesting thing is, like, when you look at this quadrant versus SDSU's quadrant, do you think is Montana's quadrant easier? If you factor in Youngstown State, and I mean, because Youngstown State, I think, has beaten any of those 4 first-round teams, and probably Furman too.
Yeah,
possibly. It's just the question mark with Furman is the problem, because if they were healthy,
yeah,
I think it changes the whole conversation. Because I definitely think Furman beats Youngstown if they're fully healthy.
Agree.
And the question mark is, does Austin Peay get caught up in the lights? That is still a young team with a young coach. That team has potential to be really, really good. And so the problem is I mean, Lafayette, Duquesne, let's just cross those. I mean, obviously neither one of those teams. It's just that Delaware hasn't played well against good teams. That's the knock on them, is that every elite team that they played, I mean, they can't get it done. And so possibly it could be easier. I just give the edge a little bit because I do think Austin Peay is better than Mercer and Gardner-Webb. And I do think Furman, especially with a week off to heal, is better than Villanova. That's the only reason I kind of give this region a little bit of a higher advantage. But the X factor is, this is no offense to Brookings, it's going to be way harder to go into Missoula and win, especially in December. It's going to be absolutely brutal. That's because you guys know how Montana fans are. With this team rolling like it is, every game is going to be a sellout, and that crowd is going to be unbearable, especially because Chattanooga, Austin Peay are not used to playing in that environment, and neither is Furman. And they're going to go up there, and by the time they play Montana, it's going to be mid-December, and it's going to be like -5 degrees, and they're not going to be ready.
Yeah, no, trust us. You're not saying anything that we don't believe there, because Missoula has the type of playoff atmosphere that we aspire to have. You know, our regular season atmosphere is there now. Like, we sell out games, they're loud. We need that to happen in the playoffs. And for anybody that's listening and doesn't plan to go out of playoff games, this is calling you out here. We need to make Brookings a big playoff atmosphere, because it's not right now, honestly. I mean, if you look at our playoff attendance in the past, I mean, there's some raucous fans there, and you know, it's the diehards, and we make some noise, but man, I don't know, most of them aren't near 10,000 people. And so it's time to show up for our team and make it a tough atmosphere to play. But I'll get off my soapbox there. I don't want to let Brendan on that soapbox, because I don't think we'll get off it for a while.
I was just going to
say the tickets are so reasonable. You got to get out and support the team.
Yeah, $10 tickets.
And I'm just saying, like, if you're not going, I would just like you to post your name and address. I'm renting a van. Don't worry if it's in your front yard. You'll wake up around 1 p.m. and you'll be in the stands, and it'll be great. And you'll just be like, hey, this is awesome. This is so cool. Why do I have a headache?
Rev says he wants to come back for a playoff game.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll put you up, bud.
Like Seth says, the weather's tough, but if you dress appropriately, it's not bad at all. It really isn't. If you dress for the weather, you'll survive. You'll be fine. There are plenty of games where I'm wearing so much that I'm sweating, and it's like negative outside, or it's below 0 outside. So you can definitely wear the right stuff, but
especially if you're making noise and being active as a fan.
Exactly.
Having been at packed cold games, like, it's not that cold because you've got so many people by you that you're just warm. It really is not bad. I see the wince from the guy from Mobile. Like,
well, I wasn't in the crowd. So it was unfair. Like I was on the sidelines for that Montana State game last year. And listen, it was really cold. And also it kicked off at like 9:30 local time. So it was like it was bad. I mean, I thought it wasn't bad early, but when you're looking at the scoreboard and it's 55-7 with 12 minutes left and your night's over and you're just standing there, nothing's exciting you. Oh yeah, it got real cold real fast.
Yeah, for sure.
I bet it did.
So how crazy did you think the players were to go and jump in the snowbank then afterwards?
Oh yeah, no chance. Listen, that's all funny. I'm good. I just don't know how y'all play up there. I'll be honest, because listen, I played high school football in Mobile, Alabama. Like, I mean, I don't think I ever played in a game that was probably below 30 in my life. And I went to that Montana State game, and it was wild that the William & Mary players were running to the sideline and just forgetting that there was ice there and just sliding until they hit the wall. Just blew my mind. I was like, what are we doing? Yeah.
At least it wasn't windy. You got some good weather that day.
That's true, man. I had to buy like a whole new outfit. I kind of talked about it on my show because I don't listen. When it's cold here, I put on a hoodie, like I'm doing now. Like it's cold in my house, I put on a hoodie. I had to go buy like a real jacket for the first time in my life. Like I've never bought a jacket, and I had to buy like a real jacket, and I had to buy one of the face coverings, a beanie, gloves, all this stuff, and it still wasn't enough.
Just drink more. You'll warm up from the inside out.
We had college football campus tour Mike come out to the Montana State semifinal. That one was colder than the one you were at.
I was supposed to be there. Yeah, I don't know if I told you guys. Like I was supposed to fly into Fargo, go to the Friday night Incarnate Word game, and then come to Brookings for the other semifinal game. And I got stuck in Texas because of the snowstorm, I guess, that hit Fargo the night before. They pushed my flight back to like Saturday, and I was like, well, I kind of need to be there before then. And so I just had to cancel everything and fly back home. So like I was supposed to go, and I had everything booked, and yeah, I was so pissed.
That sucks. Yeah, it was so cold. We were opening beers and they were freezing right after as you opened them. The beer
100%.
Like the Sickos committee retweeted it. If you did not have your mouth up and start drinking, it was froze and it was done. Yep. We had to outfit college football. We had to outfit Mike because he's from California, and he shows up and he's like in this light jacket, and I'm like, dude, no. Every Northerner, you go in our truck in the winter, there's 5 different coats just in case your truck breaks down and if you drive across somebody who's driving a Ford and you need to help them out, they're probably cold. So you've got to.
You guys know it was bad when I showed up for the Montana State game. It was wearing a hoodie and long pants. If you remember,
man, next time say something. I got coats, buddy. I got coats.
Yeah. He drives a Ford.
Oh, I just threw you a softball, didn't I?
Yeah, he did. When it's running, he drives it. Couldn't help it. I'm sorry. It was on a tee.
Back to the bracket here. We've got Montana easily moving out of this one. They will face, we're thinking either NDSU or Montana State. I guess pick one of those two or talk about either of them matching up against Montana, going to Missoula, and how you think that's going to go.
I'll be honest. I don't want to see a rematch. A rematch would be cool because of the storylines, but I don't think it's going to go any different. And I just want to see a new matchup. So I would like to see North Dakota State, but I don't think it's a good matchup for them, especially with how their offensive line. I mean, is it a shock that this is probably the worst offensive line in 5-6 years for North Dakota State, maybe longer? They just haven't played well, and with how well that Montana stops to run, I hate to say this because I might be the only national guy that's not on this kid's bandwagon. I don't think Cam Miller's that good, and I don't think he's good enough to win them a game if you take the run away. And I've said that for 2 years, and I know Sam, Craig, Kevin, all those guys are probably not with me on that, but I don't think he's in. I keep hearing all the American talk, NFL draft talk, and I'm like, what are we watching film wise where that kid is that good? And I feel the same way about Theo Day. I don't think he's very good either. I'll list off a bunch of quarterbacks I would take over them, and Yes. And if you take the run away from North Dakota State, is Cam Miller good enough to go into Wagriz in mid-December and win you a game with his arm? I don't think he is with that secondary. And I've said this repeatedly. Clifton McDowell, from where he was in like week 2 or 3 to now, looks like a different player. It's like 2K and you just spend all the VR to upgrade your player all at once, and it's like he becomes a monster. The way he's slowly gaining confidence through the air, that he rolled out this weekend against Montana State. I don't know if you guys watched the game, and hit like Junior Bergen across his body on a post route. And I'm like, where was that throw in September? It's just like he keeps getting better. And then also the fact that they have a dual threat now with Gilman's emergence as a true freshman at running back and McDowell's legs. I think Montana's rolling too much. I don't think Montana State or North Dakota State, either of those good teams, want to see this Montana team. And I've said it, it's a collision course for Montana, South Dakota State. And I'm very, very interested to see how South Dakota State and Rogers attacks McDowell with his dual threat ability, because I think he's arguably right now, the way he's playing, I know Montana State fans are going to crucify me for saying this. McDowell's the best dual threat quarterback South Dakota State's going to see this year.
Yeah.
I
I
would agree
with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I hope Montana destroys everybody. I want to see him beat Montana State, and not because I like Montana. It has not. I don't like Montana, to be honest with you. I don't like Montana. Their fans annoy me.
Sounds like
Spurs
you do the
fans,
last
you
2
are
weeks.
annoying. But what? Sounds like I do. You're crazy.
Yeah, you've been trumping for him for a while, stumping for him. I mean,
but I said they're good. They are good. But I want to see them beat like NDSU or Montana State by like 45 again, just for going into that game, because if they squeak by, SDSU fans are going to be so confident, and it's going to be annoying, to be honest with you. But also, I want that feeling of, oh boy, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a game. You know, This is, and I think they are that good that it's not something where SDSU is going to be able to just walk in and be where SDSU and win the game. Like, it's going to be a fight, and I'm excited for that. I really want that. And the atmosphere in Frisco, if you've got all these SDSU fans, who a ton of us have bought tickets already, and then the way the Montana State fans are going to turn out, because I think it'll be more like we expected last year to be, with all the NDSU and SDSU fans being down there, which was great. But I think it would have been more intense if NDSU fans, like a lot of them, had pretty much written that one off. They were like, no, I don't. I know several that didn't go because they didn't want to be a part. They didn't want to have to be there and watch us beat them.
Well, yeah,
which I just totally get.
There was no fight, there was no, oh man, I think we got it. Like every North Dakota State fan you talk to, they're like, I'm pretty sure we're screwed.
Yeah. So
but that will not be the case if we face Montana.
Not at all.
They will be of the utmost confidence, especially if they run through the playoffs like we think they will. And the way they're playing right now at the end of the season, I mean, that'll be a fun atmosphere, a fun, fan interactions. It'll be a fun tailgate. And I mean, you talked about the matchup a little bit, Zach, but how ultimately, if that is the way it plays out, how do you see it going?
South Dakota State. Yeah.
Wrong one. I don't need to be. I'm not frozen.
I was trying. I just grabbed the solo layout. It picks whichever one. I needed to move him first. I'm sorry.
Dang.
I learned
a missed opportunity.
I'm sorry.
There'll be more.
Oh man. But I guess while we wait for him, I'll probably go South Dakota State still. Like I said, they're gonna have to lose for me not to pick them at this point. Or there's got to have to be a significant, injury or bad performance or something like that, knock on wood, for me not to pick them to win the title. I just think they're that good. I think Montana will be a very tough matchup. And like you said, I wish they would bring it. I wish there was a way to expand the stadium, because with South Dakota State, Montana, they could sell out a bigger stadium than what they got down in Frisco with those two fan bases. It's going to be electric.
I think so. I think it'll be way better than last year. So,
and last year was great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the environment was great, especially I'll give y'all the credit for that. That side of the stadium during the national championship was insane.
It was fun, for sure.
It was a blast.
It was I knew it was crazy because I know you guys like stormed the field for like the trophy presentation. Like when I was like, because I was kind of there for the media side, and I was looking and I saw people crying like up in the front row, like as they were doing the trophy thing. I was like, bro, I could feel the emotion. Like this one was meant a lot to that fan base.
A
We've
long
been
time
waiting
coming.
for that for a while. Playing second fiddle to the band from Fargo, not even getting a chance to get to Frisco because we'd have to go up there and play them every year.
And then you got when I think it's even more like, because I'm a Brewers fan too, which this is going to be a weird comparison, but like I don't, as a Brewers fan, I don't want to win a World Series necessarily for me. I want Bob Uecker to win a World Series and see that. I was more emotional because Stig won the national title finally, and it had been he had built so much all the way up there. And I think a lot of fans, especially former players, those guys were really emotional because Stig won it. And I think that was a lot of too what you saw there, because not only was it a long time coming, it was Stig finally getting his. And there was a lot of people who for a long time said Stig's not the guy. He's not going to be able to do it. You're going to have to get rid of Stig to do it. So that was a huge share of that as well. But yeah, man, that was a special one.
Yeah, I don't know what the estimate on the crowd was. I mean, I definitely think you guys had the advantage. I don't know about how much so, but
I think
definitely
they're talking about this coming year if we play Montana, so like 60-40.
That's going to be very close to 50-50 because as much like whatever the allotment is for those two schools,
tickets.
Yeah, they're going to sell out whatever the allotment is for each school. It's going to be a battle to kind of get the advantage. But I would say it's not going to be above 55-45 either way.
Secondhand market tickets will be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be stupid.
Be insane.
We had some of our guys talking about that today. They wish they had bought extra tickets just to throw them up and let Montana fans buy them when the time comes.
Right. I do want to say it's fun to see a FTJ in there already from Grizz fans. And all I gotta say is that you got to buy me dinner and movie first, man. Like I'm not that easy. I'm cheap, but I'm not easy.
Yeah, I mean that's cool and all, but let's wait till you get there, bud.
Yeah. But let's go full Canadian on there. Hey. Yeah, we still got to win the games.
Leonard, Kenny, and Shorzy. That's what that's a result of.
Dustin's a savage in the chat. He
is.
He's selling sell my ticket.
No, don't put Chad next to a Montana fan. Not after that long of a tailgate.
Do you know how that would go, Brendan? I feel like you, of all people, know how that would go.
I know how that would go, especially if it's an intense game.
And I'm drunk.
Yeah, and drunk Chad, me and Chad. It hasn't happened yet this year. That's how good this team is. We haven't had a screaming match yet. We've had an argument, but it was civil, which never happens. That's usually full throat, like, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. And then it finally. But anyways.
Kind of like an old married couple. Yeah.
Sort of. So you were talking about how young the coach for Awesome P is. I'm sure you know how many new coaches we have and everything. Do you realize the age of the Jacks coaching staff, though?
Very young. Like Zach Lewan is
crazy young.
Like it was Zach Lewan's like 29, right? Or something like crazy like that. Or
might have just turned 30. Really young.
And he's one of the older ones. Like Rogers is like 36, but then I think most of them are in their 20s.
Yeah, like it's the first coaching staff that I feel like I went to high school with. It's crazy because I mean, I'm still in my 20s. It's so weird talking to like Scotty Walden and some of those guys. It's like, man, we are not that far apart, and that's why like the interviews, like, and sometimes talking to them was a whole lot more fun because the energy is so different than talking to I mean, that's a bad Witten at like Tarleton State, who's like 95 and has been coaching for 70 years. It feels like you could tell it wore on them. But yeah, I think you guys and Incarnate Word have two of the youngest staffs in the country. Like Incarnate Word hired like 21-year-olds to come in there under Kilo. Like, and Kilo's barely 32, if I'm not mistaken.
That's crazy. That's a young staff. That's the new fad, though. That's the way things are going.
That you got to connect to the recruit somehow. Like at the end of the day, like there's some older coaches, like obviously if you can recruit, you can recruit. And Eck's one of the ones that I've kind of seen does a really good job connecting to recruits. And he doesn't look like he would be good at that, but he is. But you start looking at some of the coaches around the league, Chesney is still not very old for Holy Cross, and he's got that thing rolling right now for that program. Killo was hired, Scotty Walden, Rogers. I mean, the list goes on and on of like younger guys, and even like a guy like Willie Simmons when he was hired at FAM wasn't. He's still on the younger side but you keep seeing the bar kind of get pushed down, and it's when programs make hires, they want someone to come in and fill the room up with energy, fill the room up with guys who are eager. And when you hire these older coaches, and you guys are going to understand what I'm hoping you guys understand what I'm saying. Like I said earlier, you can see the game's worn on them, and they don't have that same spark. It's kind of just like this mundane, like, I know what to do. I come in and I do my job every day, and then I go home, and coaching is hard and all this stuff. But you talk to like a guy like Scotty Walden, and it's like, man, I've never worked a day in my life, and he's bouncing around and he's screaming and he's like headbutting players. And it's like, man, I want to play for that guy other than the guy who looks like he hates coming to work every day.
Have you seen especially this last post-game video from the Jack's locker room with Jimmy jumping around with the players? I mean, how can you not love playing for that guy?
I love it. And I just, recruiting's changed so much too. It's just your approach to it. And it's just, I feel like the older coaches have a harder time adjusting, because I get it. If you're like in any trade, not just coaching, if you're in it for 15, 20 years, you kind of know what works for you. You get in your routines, and it's like all of a sudden here comes transfer portal, NIL, all this different stuff. And eventually you kind of lose it. And the great coaches can evolve and keep up with the times, but sometimes you got to go get a younger guy. And I think it'll be interesting because there's a lot of job openings now. I mean, Texas Southern, Utah Tech, Northern Arizona, Southern, all these programs are starting to make moves. ETSU, are they going to go the young route, or are they going to try again and find a really, really experienced head coach that's later in life? Because I've kind of noticed the FCS hires have been getting younger and younger every year.
Yeah, I think the older, more seasoned coaches get poached from above. So
yeah,
we see that. Where do you think Matt Saluka, he just announced his departure, where do you think he's going to end up?
I had a conversation today, and this is, listen, no one go report this. Like, this is not a confirmed report. I think Chesney's going to get
this
the
isn't on the internet at all.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, this is definitely not public.
Yeah, I think Chesney is going to get the Syracuse job.
Oh,
and I think a lot of those players are going to go with him to Syracuse.
Oh, Holy Cross!
And if it's not the Syracuse job, he's going to get a G5 job somewhere. I feel like in the Northeast, and he's going to bring those guys with him.
He's going to.
They just had too many players leave all at the same time. Like, someone got told something. You don't just have a bunch of All-Americans all hit the portal at once and just randomly, especially for a Holy Cross program that doesn't lose a lot of transfers, especially their best players. And you still got to wait on Jalen Coker and some of those other guys. But if Chesney goes, it's the age of college football. Your guys are coming with you.
Dustin does bring up a good point, though, that, Saluka is, I mean, people have pointed out that, he's going to have to be in a graduate school. So Holy Cross doesn't have a graduate program.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the other thing, too, is especially with, it's weird because even some of the Ivy kids are like that because they don't let the guys play on their grad year or something weird like that. And a lot of those Ivy League guys transfer with a year left, too. And same with like the Pioneer and some of those Patriot programs. It's crazy that, like, why wouldn't you offer grad programs when you're losing your best players? Why would you establish something to keep them in there?
Well, in I think the Patriot League, you used to not be able to redshirt either. I think that used to be a thing. You couldn't redshirt as a player. You got 4 years and you were done, which is
crazy,
wild. And yeah, it's a whole weird deal out east. It's kind of a shame because it feels like the Patriot League is on the upswing. And if they lose their coach and Saluka and everything else, and that program bottoms out, that kind of sucks because it feels like that conference had something cooking that something like the Southland doesn't have at this moment. They have momentum that was going upwards.
The Southland is so bad right now. I mean, I don't even know. Like, I mean, we're seriously having a conversation that Houston Christian might be the third best team in that conference right now. Like, that blows my mind.
We just all need to get together and make sure that Joe and Sean end up there next year.
I can't believe they didn't follow through with that. I needed to see them at the CVS watching the game like that.
We saved their ass.
Community would be all over that, right?
now we're on like a 2-year ban again, so it's up to it's
We
up to the
should
fans.
pick where they go next, right? Like this is what should happen.
But no, they should went to
Dude.
both. Like it can't be expensive to get to Houston Christian. It's a
No.
big city. Like that's an easy trip. I like listen. That I'll call Joe and them out, man. They should have still went to Houston. Like that's not a hard trip to get to Houston.
I felt a little bad because they just had to go to Campbell, and I mean they're young guys, and then you end up on a dry campus. It's like I'd have been pissed at that age. Really?
And there's
Right.
nothing in Bues Creek because I went last year for the North Carolina Central game. There is nothing in Bues Creek. It's bad.
How do they get? How do you recruit these? Even we here are big believers that the star ranking system at FCS level is bunk, and it's not worth the paper it's put on. However, how do you even get the guys that are that highest stars like they get to a place like that, dry campus with nothing? That boggles my mind.
And they got a bunch of them. I mean, it is funny enough. The recruiting coordinator is now the head coach at Houston Christian, and they're landing 3 stars left and right. They've landed 3 stars in the past like 48 hours out of the state of Texas.
So when does the Louisville-esque story of strippers and money come out?
I don't know. And listen, I love Braxton, man. He's a cool dude, and I can see how he's recruiting high. I don't know how you convince kids to go to Campbell and they convince kids to go to HCU. I mean,
Houston's a terrible town.
Listen, I don't even know how. And the funny part is, they lost some of those transfers. All the guys that transferred out are balling out at their new schools. And it's like those kids weren't overrated. They were they just didn't work out at Campbell. It just,
Right.
I don't know. And I mean, yeah, someone in the chat said like that's where Feldkamp went when he transferred from you guys.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I don't even. And then I think he started early, but then they had a true freshman, a 3-star wide receiver kid who's up for the Jerry Rice Award. It had a crazy year.
Yep.
And
That's
Tyler's
nuts.
a great kid. We all wished him well for sure.
That catch he had
Yeah.
in camp was ignorant this
Oh,
year. I don't know if you guys
yeah.
saw it, the one-handed catch. I mean, he just snagged it. I was like, whoa, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's a stud. So to wrap it up, who you got for the Celebration Bowl out of the SWAC? Because we know that it's Hampton for the MEAC, but who do you got
Howard.
going? Who went? Howard, right? God, Hampton's
Yeah,
in the
listen,
CAA
they will
now.
crucify you. They
Yeah.
real HU.
Oh,
like
I know.
big
They're going to
rivals.
be pissed. Yeah. I'm going to get burned down on Twitter in about 10
Yard
minutes.
talk is going to be all over your ass.
Eat me like
Someone clip it. Someone
no,
clip it.
don't clip it. Don't do that. I don't need that evil on my soul. I'm very sorry. That was a terrible mistake. I won't do it again.
Hey, it's okay. I got called out. I accidentally called Amar Angel last night. They both start with A, and I should have just said number 3. It would have been easier.
That's not going to get you a whole conference.
That's
of people
true.
Pissed off.
That's true.
It's different.
This works. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just apologizing for that live on air.
And
It's
they're
okay. I
not
can
small fan bases, and they're loud. They will tell me.
Well, did you see the Missouri guy? So Jackson State beat Missouri last night in basketball, and one of the fans tweeted out and said, "Man, I'd be getting roasted if Jackson State had a fan base." And I was like, "Oh, I don't think you knew the Hornets." Yeah, I was like,
Wrong.
"You need to delete that ASAP."
Yeah.
Man, but
There you go.
celebration.
Dustin submitting
Yeah.
you to HBCU Nightly.
I'm in the group
No, we
chat.
don't need to
I'm
do
in
that.
I'm in the
I'm gonna
HBCU
die.
Nightly group chat. I'm gonna send them the link. I'll be like, "Man, you should."
Let's see. We're at about a $1.20, bud.
Get Zach off of this show. I don't need.
Nah, I guess to answer your question before we got way off track there, I'm gonna go with Fam. I know Dustin's trolling. I mean, Fam beat PV 45-7 like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and PV lost to Houston Christian 30-0. Just to put it in perspective on how not good that team is, and they're a bad matchup against Fam, and I think they're gonna roll. Willie Simmons knows what's at stake, and also the second longest home winning streak in the FCS behind Montana State resides in Bragg. That crowd is going to be electric. They've been waiting for this. This will be the first potential outright conference championship since 2001, because they won the MEAC in 2019, but were on probation, so they couldn't go to the Celebration Bowl. They want this one, and it sets up a huge matchup. Now, I know Howard doesn't have the prestige among the FCS that it might need to, but celebrity wise, Howard is a draw in Atlanta. And same for FAMU. FAMU Howard is going to be a crazy Celebration Bowl, but I still like FAMU to come out with a win in the Celebration Bowl. Willie Simmons has been building something really special down in Tallahassee, so I'm gonna ride with FAMU.
I mean, you got him on your shirt, right?
Yeah, I got it. I got to. I'll be in Tallahassee in 2 weeks for the SWAT championship. Possibly. I'm still considering possibly going to Bozeman if North Dakota State will win. North Dakota State goes up there, and I'm still deciding on that one.
That'll be a fun atmosphere. That'll be wild because Montana State wants some retribution on them. For the record, I deserve all the shit I get for what I just did between Howard and Hampton, especially when we get mad about being called San Diego State all the time. So
Right.
I deserve every ounce of what I get and comes down the pipeline from that. So yeah, that was unforgivable. But beyond that, we should probably be done, right?
I think so.
It's time.
We gotta thank you, Zach, so much for coming on. Somebody mentioned earlier, they're like, man, it's just so cool hearing Zach rattle off all the players' names. It's because he's one of the best in the FCS, if not the best. I mean, we appreciate your coverage. You do such a good job, and we really, really appreciate you coming on with us.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me. And Brandon, I'll send you that Howard shirt because that's definitely going to have to be part of the outfit next week.
Absolutely. I'll rock it. I'll paint my face.
But no, I definitely appreciate you guys, man. I love what you guys are doing, and hopefully I'll be back up in Brookings. If not, I'll see you guys in Frisco. Hopefully I didn't, knock on wood, I didn't jinx it because I get worried about that, but see you guys in Frisco for sure.
Hell yeah, man.
That sounds good.
To it.
Perfect. All right. With that,
go with us.
As Jim says, as we always say, go big, go blue, go Jacks.
Go Jacks.
Go Jacks.